Piatti here. Piatti in a race. Derek off his line, and Piatti somehow scores it. What a play from Ignacio Piatti, the designated player.
Octavio Rivero! The Whitecaps take the lead. Octavio Rivero, their big off-season signing, with a goal 19 minutes into his debut.
Here's Trevinko.
Lovely ball through towards Altidore. Altidore! Toronto FC's big acquisitions combine to tie the game. Josie Altidore.
The Two Solitudes Soccer Podcast with Dwayne Rollins and Kevin Laramie. The award-winning soccer podcast that covers every single aspect of Canadian soccer. And now, without further ado, here's Dwayne Rollins.
And welcome to a special edition of the Two Solitudes podcast. Kevin Laramie, he joins me in Montreal. We finally have the Ottawa interview. John Pugh joins us today. We did a special show just for this and to wrap up the midweek games for the Canadians and a little bit of a Canadian review. So this will be a bit of a shorter show, but I think it'll be worthwhile because we have John Pugh, the president of the Ottawa Fury, on the line. We'll bring him on in a minute along with some audio from Mark DeSantos, of course, who resigned as the head coach of the Ottawa Fury, effective at the end of the season just this past week. We had a question about that, but then we moved on to more Ottawa Fury stuff. But we're going to have Mark DeSantos' voice himself talking about, with the decision to leave Ottawa. Then we'll bring John on the line. But before we do all of that, Kevin, how is your Thursday morning?
And actually, a very happy Thursday morning. A late one because last night was a late night with USL. There was some USL game. It was a late night there too. But in MLS, the Montreal Impact were in San Jose for their second game in their California trip up the north coast of California. And another great result. And it's quite a stretch that the Impact have achieved. They showed fight, and it was that's why it was a good night last night.
Yeah, and Toronto played as well, and I don't know if they showed as much fight, so we'll talk about that. And the Whitecaps, I think, pretty much booked their trip to the quarterfinals of the CCL with a win last night as well. So we'll talk about all that in the Canadian review. But first, let's bring those Ottawa voices on, starting with Mark DeSantos.
Once we started this project in July 2013, building the club and everything, we had that commitment of keeping an identity, the commitment of building something with strong roots, for the future. So at the end of the day, the most important thing is not the coach. The coach is only a part of the process, a part of the puzzle. The most important thing is where the club is today, where the fan base is today, how they grew, the players that want to play for the Ottawa Fury, the players that want to be in this club, the history, the short history, and the short interest we start getting from other players of being here. So I think that the most important thing in the club is the logo. It's the club, it's the fan base. So there's going to be a lot of coaches that are going to come and go, a lot of players that are going to come and grow. And the important is that those fans and the people that are so important for the future of the club continue supporting this club, because this club is in the right direction. This club wants to keep growing, and this club is going to have a lot of success with me or without me.
And welcome back to this special edition of the Two Solitudes podcast. John Pugh, the president of the Ottawa Fury, joins us on the line. A great season in Ottawa. We wanted to highlight that. Also a bit of news this week. So right off the top, we'll just touch on that real quick. What is the legacy of Mark DeSantos, and how hard will he be to replace?
Well, Mark does leave a legacy, as you're aware, but I think he leaves a lot. Mark would be the first to to say that the reason we have had this success that we've had recently has been a team effort, and a team effort over the time that Mark has been here, and also the staff. So obviously Martin Nash, Mark's second in command, our academy director Phil Dos Santos, Mark's brother, of course, Bruce Grobbelaar, our goalkeeper coach, and Darko Buser, who's another coach with our staff coach with our academy. So it's been a real team effort, and fortunately much of that team remains and will remain, and so Mark's passing will obviously be noticed, but I think we have a project going on here in Ottawa. There was no pro soccer in Ottawa up to this point, really, as you know, and we've been working very, very hard to put something in place here that will be lasting for a long time, and that's both kind of on the field and off the field, and Mark's obviously contributed to both of those, and we're very happy with where we are and what we're focusing on right now in terms of on the field with the playoffs, and obviously the growing fan base that we see attending the games on a weekly basis now.
I was up for the very first home game that you had at that small little stadium on the university campus there. I'm coming back up at the end of this month for a game. What will the biggest difference that I will see? What will it be, do you think?
Well, I think the biggest difference we're still in the playoff race, and it's a nice day. We've had crowds of over 6,000 four times now and recently. So I think you're going to find that difference. I think you're also going to find a difference in in just the nature and knowledge base of the fans. We're into our second season now. We've done an enormous amount of work in the community. The players have been out there. The fans have grown to connect with the team and with the style of soccer that we play. And I think there's much more of a knowledge base. As I said initially, pro soccer is new to Ottawa, and we've had to develop slowly but surely that soccer culture. And of course, you're right. We played in the university stadium, so you're going to notice a huge difference in the stadium that we're playing in and the facilities that we have. And it's a marvelous place to play soccer, and we definitely enjoy having what perhaps it's fair to say is probably the best stadium in the league.
Ottawa is a city that's blooming in Toronto, in Ontario, and in the country as well. What really impresses me is with the Red Blacks, and now the Fury with the new stadium, a lot of new buildings as well. What does the Fury mean? What does the booming of Ottawa mean? Is it the new identity of Ottawa with the Fury and the Red Blacks?
Well, I think you're right, and it's a big project, as you're probably aware. If you haven't been to Ottawa recently, what started off as four guys sitting around a table dreaming of bringing CFL football back, led to we have to fix the stadium, which led to we have to fix the park, and led to, let's not have a stadium just for 9 CFL games. Let's bring soccer into it, so a new soccer franchise. So it's turned into a tremendous destination, and Ottawa is beginning to embrace it wholeheartedly. We had the Women's World Cup here. We had 6 events in that. We just had AC/DC playing on the field in the first outdoor concert since the Rolling Stones were here in 2005. There's a huge urban park as part of the development, and right now we've got the city's biggest folk festival taking place there, and even on non-event days, there's an array of restaurants and patios, and it's a living place. We sort of call it Lansdowne Live, and it's been great for those that have been involved with the project to see that come to life, and it be such a destination now in the eyes of people in Ottawa.
You mentioned the Women's World Cup. Like you mentioned, there was 6th event in Ottawa. Did you see a boost in the Fury attendance or the Fury coverage or the buzz around the Fury after the Women's World Cup with all the attention it did gather?
Well, I think it's hard to pinpoint exactly, where the boost has come. Having such a successful team on the field obviously is one of the factors. But yes, the Women's World Cup brought people who had not been to TD Place down to the stadium and for soccer games, and we were very fortunate. We had some really, really exciting games that were played here, and so that's certainly helped. Even in a strange way, I think AC/DC helped because again that brought a whole new array of people down to the park and down to the stadium that hadn't been there before. We could see that in the comments that we got back from surveys we did. And generally speaking, everybody is pretty much wowed by the development that's taken place here.
John, let's turn this to on the field, where it's been a tremendous turnaround in the fall season. I mean, you saw the writing on the wall in the later part of the spring season with that long shutout streak. Once the goal started to come, this team really gelled into is at the top of the standings right now. What has been the key in your mind to that turnaround?
Well, I think it's been a project over 2 years. I think we saw a lot of progress in the first year, and in the spring season this year, we were a strong, very, very competitive team, but we sorely missed a number of key players. I'll speak of Richie Ryan, our captain, for one. That Richie played, I think, 30 minutes total in the whole of that spring season. So. We brought in a number of new players, as you'd expect. After your first year, there was some changeover, but a strong core of players remained, and we brought in some players that took a little bit of time to gel. And as you know, by about the end of the spring season, we had put together a back line that was pretty formidable, and together with the keeper. We started to put that run together where we hadn't conceded a goal, etc. And that built confidence, I think, in the whole team. Our scoring, which was a problem in the spring, and putting the ball in the back of the net. Suddenly, the whole team contributed. If you notice, we may be top of the league and so on. But if you look at the homepage of the league, we don't have a player in the leading goal scorer or the leading assist table that's kind of visible there, and that's been a great feature of it too. Is the fact that they've come together and gelled as a team, and where are we now? I think we've lost one game in the last 17, which is quite an awesome record.
It certainly is. The player that most people would be familiar with is Julian de Guzman, of course, and it was a bit of a coup to get him. Could you just sort of take us back and talk about how you did manage to pull that off and what Julian has meant to the team?
Yeah, well, Julian's been an important part. You're right for many reasons. It was great to be able to bring Julian on board. He's the captain of Canada. Who wouldn't want the captain of Canada playing for their team? He's a tremendous person in the dressing room. There's a reason why he's the captain of Canada, and so we knew that would have an immediate effect on the team. And unfortunately, fortunately for Canada, of course, he's missed a number of games with our national team, and we knew that would be the case, and we know he's captain of Canada. And he's had a number of injuries along the way, but it's been a tremendous asset to us, and it's going to be great to have him around in the run up to what we hope will be a spot in the playoffs.
Now, I appreciate you're going to have to answer this question a little carefully. There is some talk about a Canadian league and the possibility of that league will leave decisions to be made by clubs that exist already. I know you can't tell us what you would do in that case because you have to be careful there, but what kind of thinking would go into a decision like that?
That's a good question, I guess. I mean, to be honest with you, at this point in time, I would suspect that probably, the MLS teams definitely, and Edmonton would probably answer the same way, that they have a comfort level in the league that they're in. We have as I said, we have a project going here, and we have been very pleased in recent months with the growth in our fan base and so on. It's when the New York Cosmos come to town and Minnesota come to town, what we're seeing here is a very, very high level of soccer, and our fans are getting used to that. And that's what we want to put in front of our fans here in Ottawa, absolutely the best level of soccer that we can, and that is sustainable in our market, and that kind of project continues.
John, one final question, a real tough one to end it. What type of crowd do you expect when you host the Soccer Bowl later this fall?
Well, a lot of things have to fall in place, of course, before that, as you know, to host a playoff game. Given the playoff structure of the NASL, we would have to basically win the full season. And there is a seeding that takes place. So a lot of things have to fall in place before Ottawa would host a soccer bowl. We can probably promise everyone it will be a little bit chilly in the second week of November, but I don't know. This town has started to adopt this team as their soccer team, and I think we might be surprised by the size of the crowd if that were to happen.
Well, I hope to be there if it happens. So we do thank you for your time today, John, and good luck the rest of the way.
You're very welcome.
I want to say that we are playing a fully professional team, and most of our players, I think we have 4 professional players. All the rest have to go to work like I do, like you do, Madbull. And everybody in the whole world want to tip their hats off to the Jaguars for a wonderful, great job. A sacrifice, Madbull.
Yes, back inside again. It's partially broken up there. Picked up there.
Play on Channel 5, Madbull.
All those live streaming audience out there, man, you're getting it live from Channel 5. You cannot complain. Back inside the game.
And ladies and gentlemen, here comes Nakajima Isen-Karan.
In honor of Madbull and Maestro, get your Team Benny's t-shirt, the #1 store. Canadian Soccer News for all the details. Or maybe you're more a Phillips Bakery type of guy. Well, Canadian Soccer News for all the details. Or teespring.com.
The 20-year-old, we know who Madbull is. Madbull is a shooter. Madbull, you would have shot that ball even if you were way deep in the deep ocean.
Yes, back inside the game.
It was not. The jewel sailed once again by the grace of the Almighty God. 1-0 Belize still from
The Canadian Review on the Two Solitudes Soccer Podcast.
And welcome back, and thanks to the Ottawa Fury for providing that audio of Marc Dos Santos. That's on their YouTube channel, and for booking John for us. We had a bit of an adventure getting him over the last couple months, just timing wise. They were always willing. It wasn't anything like that, but we finally got him on, and I hope you enjoyed that. We'll try and get some more Fury guests on as their postseason push continues. They continue to me to be one of the best stories in Canadian soccer. It's certainly the most untold story in Canadian soccer right now. A lot of people are talking about the Whitecaps. Toronto FC, of course, takes a lot of the headlines always for good and bad reasons, and the impact with Drogba. But what's happening in Ottawa is certainly something to take note of as well, Kevin.
No, absolutely. With their position right now in the table in the fall season and the combined season, they have a great shot to the postseason and have a great chance to capture the attention when maybe the other Canadian team will be eliminated. We'll see. But outside of that, what really interests me is the future for Marc Dos Santos. He's not going to be the Montreal Impact new coach next year. It's already been said. It's probably going to be Mauro Biello, especially with the job he's doing after 3 games. That being said, Marc Dos Santos, there's a big rumor right now that he will accept a assistant position with Sporting Kansas City. And Dwayne, as much as it's very credible people saying that rumor, they've been hearing it from different sources, I still have trouble seeing Marc Dos Santos as an assistant. He's a great head coach. He's a great leader of men, and I can't see him as an assistant position unless he knows something we don't.
Yeah, look, it is a bit of an odd one. There would be a pay raise involved. I'm almost certain. I've been talking to some people in Ottawa. They sort of suggest that the Fury's budget is tight. They do a lot with a little. He would get a bit more money to go down there. I think that it's just a case, if he does in fact go down there, and every sign points to it right now, to the assistant in Kansas City position, that it would be with an eye to getting into a head coaching position with MLS. Now, he did say something interesting as well last week, that his long-term goal would be to become the head coach of the Canadian men's national team. That's an interesting thought. I think that would appeal to a lot of people in this country that like to see domestic coaches get ahead. Now, we've gone down that route before with not great success with Frank Yallop, and Stephen Hart, I think, did fairly well, with the exception of that last game. We've gone the foreign coach this time, so that is an interesting thought process there. I doubt that that's any short-term goal. Floro is the man for now, and certainly will be for the rest of this qualifying campaign.
No, absolutely. But one hypothesis that I had when I first learned that Marc Dos Santos was going to leave the Fury at the end of the season, Dwayne, what are the opportunities right now in Major League Soccer as a head coach? There's LAFC and Atlanta. What I mean is, those teams are coming in 2017, apparently, especially for LA. And if they want to pull what New York City FC did with Jason Kreis, get a credible, proven coach, which Marc Dos Santos is, even though it's not MLS, he has a very good pedigree behind him. You can have him set up the team from the beginning with the players he wants. Granted, New York did not necessarily have the same success they were hoping this year, but that could be an opportunity for Dos Santos. And he did mention the West Coast in his comments. So, West Coast, Kansas City is not necessarily the West Coast, it's more the Midwest. So, maybe LA is actually a possibility as well.
Yeah, certainly there will be the LA job, the Atlanta job for sure. Perhaps the Miami job if they ever get their act together down there. Minnesota is all but sure to get in. They still need to work their stadium out there. So there's a lot of new positions coming within MLS in the near future. Minnesota would probably be very familiar with his work, obviously, there, since they have a team in NASL and have competed directly against him and have seen the work that he's doing with the Fury right now. So that is a lot of interesting possibilities for that. And I think that we should all, as Canadians, if we want to take our club hats off for a minute, wish Marc Dos Santos well and hope that he does have a successful coaching transition, because we do need more Canadian coaches coaching at higher levels. I think that benefits the game as a whole. He's done a wonderful job at Ottawa, and there's no doubt. And to build that program in just 2 years, I think is something that really would open eyes across North American, soccer circles. We talk about the Fury aren't getting talked about in the general public, but certainly they would know what's happening there, and it would open eyes, and they would be aware of him. Now, he's not a household name. I'm sure that if a MLS team hired him as a head coach, there'd be fans going, well, he doesn't have any experience, and who is this guy? But this is a guy that really has succeeded so far and has done well at all of the minor levels, and it's probably time for him to test himself a little bit more. Let's move real quickly and talk about the future of the Fury. I wonder, Martin Nash would probably be an obvious choice, the current assistant there now to take over. I wonder about the fellow at FC Montreal. Do you think he would be interested in a job like that?
That's a very good question. Philippe Lafroy doesn't necessarily have ambitions to become a head coach. What passions him, what he really likes is development, is to take young players and mold them into professionals, and that's really a strong point. Do this apply to an NSL type of team with an academy? Yes, but not to the extent of the Montreal Academy right now, especially with a USL team. I don't know. Philippe Lafroy is coming back this weekend from a trip to Europe for coaching seminars that he's giving and that he's receiving as well. So while he's doing this, Simon Gatti was coaching the last couple of games for FC Montreal, but it is possible that Philippe Lafroy would go back to head coaching, but I would really surprised to see it happening. He's really ingrained, and basically the Montreal Impact Academy is his academy.
Fair enough. I do think that I suspect that Ottawa will go domestic with their hire for a lot of reasons. I think, as we talked about a little bit earlier, the budget may not allow for a big name hire outside of the country anyway. So they will probably be looking at, that young Canadian coaching ranks. Maybe Jason Bent might want to put his hat in the ring, the TFC2 head coach, a guy that's been an assistant with TFC for years now. Guys like that might be someone that they'd be looking at. So we'll see and watch that one moving forward. I think at that point we'll move on and we'll talk about the 3 games that happened with the MLS teams last night in a Canadian review of sorts here today. And we'll start with Montreal, where who scored, Kevin?
Kyle Mother effin' Becker with his first career goal in Major League Soccer from about 78 yards out of the... All right, I'm exaggerating just a tad. Just outside the box. A left foot that beat the keeper near post to tie the game at 10 men. Oh, what a man. Becker, the greatest of all time.
Kyle Becker. Now, I didn't watch the Montreal game last night because I was busy, digesting TFC. We'll talk about them in a minute. But from all accounts, he played a game that didn't even look like himself out there. And I wonder whether that little stint in USL, where they tried to teach him a little defensive responsibility, had him play a little bit deeper down the pitch, might have been what he needed in his career for a while. And hopefully, I think anyone who wants the Canadian national team to succeed, people like to bash Kyle Becker, but you want him to succeed. You want him to add depth to that program. So I think anyone should be happy with that.
Yes, it was circumstances were different. That's why Kyle Becker started the game, because of the fact that a lot of starters have taken Joey Saputo's jet back to Montreal after the LA game. The Drogba, Piatti, Donadel, Mapp, Bush, a lot of key players from Montreal were rested this Wednesday. So you had a starting lineup that was not necessarily a B team, but it was a makeshift lineup. You did have Arturo up top, then you had Venegas, you had Alexander playing, Becker starting, players that we're not used to seeing there. Nero Rio Coker back to the midfield, but Becker really shined in that game. He was able to show the skills that we do know he has on the ball, but he was responsible defensively, not necessarily giving anything up to San Jose. Montreal, even though they had, in quotes, to beat him out there, were very organized and very they were hard to play against. It's hard for me to find the words to describe it, but they were chirpy, they were chippy, they were edgy, they were hard to win duels, and that made for a very difficult game for San Jose, who don't really have the much firepower that you would think they would have with Wando and pillow feet Adam John. Wando did score the goal, but it was on a clearly big mistake by Alexander, twice actually on the play that led to San Jose's goal. So basically Montreal, they allowed the goal because of a mistake they made, so they really played a better game defensively than even the score says.
The word you were looking for is un-TFC.
Let's talk about TFC.
TFC is what TFC is, right? And last night was maybe their worst game of the season. And
let's put in context, Yankee Stadium on the baseball pitch, very small, which Greg Vanney mentioned, if I'm not mistaken. It's even too small for 12-year-olds.
It is a small pitch, and it's unfortunate, but every team has to play on it, including the team that beat them 2-0 last night. They're going to be a little bit used to it. As NYCFC gets better, that is going to be a huge home advantage for them. There's no doubt about that, but, whatever. It's an excuse to point to the field. Look, Vanny also said that his team, quote-unquote, didn't try hard enough, weren't working hard enough, and a lot of fans will applaud that. And they don't applaud what he said after the New England game, where he said, we played well, we created things, we just were a bit unlucky. So I'm the opposite, though. I don't like it when coaches start talking about trying hard and work ethic and things like that, because those are intangibles and cliches in my mind. You don't know how hard a team is. They're all trying. Like, there's something fundamentally wrong with how they're set up or how they're reacting to it or whatever. So I do have issues with that kind of excuse making, the field and not trying hard enough. Like, it's not about not trying hard enough. Sometimes it's about not being aware enough, not being prepared properly. I, as you know, am not someone who is ever going to abdicate, at least not for another year or so, for Greg Vanney to be canned. But I do see his inflexibility as beginning to be a bit of a problem now, which is I've come around to some people's thinking on Vanny in terms of his inability to go away from the hyper, bombing the fullbacks forward, playing a higher line, that sort of stuff. When you have so much defensive problems like TFC does, then maybe at some point you need to sit a second defensive midfielder in front of the line or something. Maybe you need to instruct the fullbacks to sit back a little bit more and try and play a little tighter. Maybe you need to do something to address the defensive shortcomings, because as I've said all year, if you do address the defensive shortcomings, Kevin, this team could be dangerous. But
they have the power to do so. One thing that I'm wondering, Dwayne, is Toronto the assistant of Greg Vanney? Do they have what I would consider a mentor or a Enzo Conchina type that Mauro Biello do have in Montreal, that when he's not sure tactically or technically what he should do for the club, he always go to Enzo, and Enzo has the experience, the knowledge, and the know-how to give him great advice. Is that what's missing for the Toronto staff right now?
Now, Robin Fraser is the head assistant, and he is a guy that's highly respected for his work in New York with the Red Bulls. So, a lot of people made the joke that he was, when they announced him as the assistant coach, that, oh, okay, well, that's who's going to take over for Vanny when they fire him in their annual firing in August. But I don't want to talk about Greg Vanney firing, because I truly don't believe that that's something that's this is going to rub people the wrong way. Bezbatchenko fired Nelson to get his man in. Once his man's in, I do not believe that he believes that he wants to fire him. He sees that as the team that's going to go forward, himself and Vanny. So for better or worse, the only way Vanny goes is if they do fall off the cliff this year and somehow miss the playoffs from here, which would be historical. It would be worse than the 0-9 start based on the schedule and where they are. Or if Bezbatchenko himself got fired is the only other way that I see that happening.
How about you say that stat that you said on Soccer Morning today?
Here's the number that TFC fans should look at and take some hope for if you're panicking right now. And it's I'll use
anybody interested in the Eastern Conference battle race, in any case, not just Toronto fans, Montreal fans that are going to be battling Toronto for a playoff spot. Maybe they are interested in that number.
I said it in American on Soccer Morning. I'll say it in Canadian here. It's 541. That's the total amount of kilometers TFC travels the rest of the regular season. They do 5 consecutive games at home: Colorado, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, the Red Bulls, and Columbus. They make 1 away trip to Montreal. They don't leave Canada for the rest of the regular season. That is an advantage. And look, a lot of people dismiss anything you say when you look at schedule and say that's an advantage for TFC. That's ridiculous. It is. The fact they're playing 5 straight home games is absolutely something that benefits them, because travel is a massive issue in this league. If they are able to sit at home, get healthy, they're going to get a lot more practice time, a lot more training time to try and address those defensive issues, because they're sitting at home for 5 consecutive weeks, 6 weeks. There's a bye week in there.
It's basically a big training camp before the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. That is what that start of the year, when they did the 7 straight on the road to start, this is the coin, the reverse side of the coin. Now, look, they need to get results out of this. Obviously, they're sitting on 37 points right now. I think they need to get to 45 to assure themselves a playoff spot. Absolutely. I think maybe it might be lower, but I'll say 45 would absolutely put them in. So, you're probably going to need, 3 wins out of that to get there. Do you think they're going to get 3 wins out of Colorado, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, Columbus, and Montreal? I'll say this: if they don't deserve to make the playoffs.
Fair enough, yeah. And the way it is right now, it's going to be hard for any Canadian team to come out of the playoff, Montreal included, because of the game in hand, but more because of the points they already have and the gap that still does exist in the points per game ratio. So for all those reasons, I still maintain my prediction that all Canadian teams make the playoffs in 2015.
Yeah, I don't think Toronto's at risk. I mean, that I just really, truly don't. I could see, when you look at the schedule, objectively take a step back, walk off the ledge, you can easily draw, let's say they beat Colorado, Chicago, and Philadelphia, which are the 3 teams they should win. They lose to New York. We'll give that one away. They lose to Columbus even. We'll give that one away. And they get a draw against Montreal. That would be 10 points. That would get them to 47 points. You put maybe another result in there against Columbus, the ideal start, they're at 50 points, and then you are talking about a home playoff date. This is not the disaster it people are making it out to be, but it does need to turn around quickly, and they do need to take advantage of this, and that's the bottom line with TFC.
Last night, Dwayne, as well, Vancouver won at home against Olympia, but it wasn't that easy. And Olympia, if they win out, they win the group, but it's not going to be easy for them as well.
Yeah, I think Vancouver's probably safe there. Seattle, when they dropped the points down in Central America, really put themselves behind the eight ball. Yeah, I don't know what more to say about this other than the fact that it was only 1-0 might be a bit of a red flag for someone who's really looking for ways to nitpick the Whitecaps win. They do need to find a way to score more goals, in my mind, if they truly are going to be a championship contender or a contender to go deep like Montreal did in this competition. The attendance wasn't spectacular if you want to talk about that, but I think that Vancouver is learning what Montreal and Toronto already knew, is that it's hard to draw people in midweek for games against teams that a lot of your more casual fans don't know, right?
Oh yeah, it wasn't Club America, it was CD Olympia. It's not the same thing. It's not as marketable as a big club would be.
Yeah, I mean, I know who they are, but I'm a bit weird.
But we're in the bubble.
Yeah, absolutely. Outside of the bubble. That's, we talk about the bubble, and the CCL is the ultimate bubble competition. Those inside the bubble love it. Those outside the bubble barely know it exists. Anyway, I think that that said, it was interesting. I guess we'll end with this. There was a couple things I want to end with, a couple bullet points. The CCL, there was some rumblings that they're going to change the format again to make it a single-year format. I don't know how exactly that's going to work, except for I suspect they're going to even further reduce the amount of games that are played in it. That could benefit teams. I think it would benefit teams in MLS because they would be able to put more resources towards it, or they'd be more willing to put more resources towards it. And I suspect MLS and the Mexican teams are behind the push to reduce it to a single calendar year to try and, I suspect, get rid of the group stage altogether and maybe have, if you go 24 teams, what you do is you have the top 8 teams get a bye to the round of 16, then you have the other 16 teams play off to get to 8 to go into that round of 16. It's a simple sort of knockout from there, and I suspect that's probably what they're thinking about. No timetable on when that would happen. Probably couldn't happen any sooner than when this one wraps up, then perhaps they wait until January to start the next one. I suspect that's what they're thinking of doing.
No, it has to be 2018 because some teams already have their tickets for 2016, 2017, Dwayne.
Yeah,
so
well,
it really has to be a minimum 2017, 2018, if not 2018 single.
Well, the teams would remain the same. It would just be the format would change. So they've done that in the past when they went to 3-team groups from 4-team groups. It's constant. The thing about this competition, as I said, like the bubble fans love it, but those teams hate it. Like the Mexican teams think that the group stage is beneath them, basically. It's a pain in their butt, and they don't like go and do it. They send their kids up there and try and get through it with the least amount of effort possible. MLS teams a lot of them are inward thinking anyway, but the ones that do look outside of it still struggle to handle both the MLS and the CCL play because of the roster limitations. So, there's a lot of sense for those two leagues to try and get a reduced format, and they have the power in the region. The very last thing I wanted to talk about today, Kevin, there's not really anything to break down this, but FIFA 16, Kevin.
Canada will be included. Both the man and the women. I think we have to thank the women for the man being included in that game. But for once, I'll be able to win the World Cup with my team on my TV screen.
Yeah, you absolutely have to thank the women for being involved because they already did the graphic work to create the strips and the jerseys and the logos. So all they had to do is plug players that are already elsewhere in the game in to make a Canadian national team at that point, right?
No, yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah,
and there's rumors too that other leagues will be new leagues, including FIFA 16, potentially even maybe the NASL, maybe in 2017. So a lot of interesting new roster addition and a lot of new gameplay feature in the new FIFA 16 that will be coming out in the next 2 weeks. So if you are a FIFA gamer, which I have to say I am, and if you are on PS4, why don't you add me, Kev Larame? That way you can try to beat me, which you possibly won't, but you can try at FIFA 16.
And if anyone wants to buy me a PS4, I'd be happy to join as well.
He wants to play too. He wants to get better, but yeah.
You'd definitely beat me if you added me at any rate. Look, this is important, I think, because having that ability to play with a team helps kids of a certain generation identify with them. And we've talked about that, I think, on Five Rings before, but it absolutely matters.
What I'm going to say with this, Dwayne, and you will relate to this as well. It started with baseball cards in the 50s. That's how people knew about baseball players, and they were fighting with baseball cards, and that created a generation that knew stats and baseball players. Then he moved on to hockey cards. For my generation, when we were kids, we were battling with hockey cards, training them, and we got to know the players this way. Then it went to NHL 94, the Sega Genesis. That's how people actually learn and love the hockey in that span. And for this generation now, it's FIFA, and it's been for the last decade, and that's how big clubs has become bigger because of the reach, international reach of that platform. Any different platform, mobile devices, game consoles, PC, the FIFA world made household names out of second and third division teams, and because of this reach, it can help Canada become a country that's more not well seen, but at least well known in the entire international soccer world.
Yeah, FIFA, the game is it crosses, like, non-soccer fans play FIFA because it is one of their best sports games. I think it probably is.
It captures the fun of playing soccer as much as scoring goals as defending, and it's one of the rare games, especially now with all the new gen consoles and technology. It's rare that you get the feeling you're actually playing a sport when you're actually playing a video game. It's the same feeling almost. You have to think like you do.
Yeah, I've told the story before that, I know people that became soccer fans because they started playing FIFA. Absolutely. They didn't care for the sport at all until they played it, and then they started playing with the same team, then they adopted that team, and now they're fans. That's a common story for people of a certain generation, so it does matter. And again, we thank the Canadian women for getting in that game, because now the Canadian men are as well. First time since 1998. The road to the 98 World Cup was the last FIFA game that Canada was involved in. I actually did used to play that one quite a bit when I was working. The job I worked at the time, I was doing overnights, and they had a video game system, so I used to play the road to the FIFA 98 or road to the 98 World Cup. It was much easier to play back then. You basically had about 2 moves that you could score on every time. So
yeah, pass and shoot, and the joystick. That's about it.
I think the back buttons did a few things too, but they just shoot, pass. Yeah.
Now it takes like 5 months to realize what all you can do with your player, and by the time you master the game, the new one comes out.
I tried to play Madden once, and I just threw the controller across the room. It was like, forget this.
Talk about a learning curve.
Yeah, there's no way. Anyway, all right. On that note, Kevin, this is a special edition, which I think ended up being close to a full edition, but whatever. And we'll see you again on Tuesday, probably, for the next Two Solitudes podcast. Kevin, say goodbye.
Absolutely. And be careful, though. I have to do a little disclaimer. If you start playing FIFA 15 or 16, it is the gateway into falling in love with this beautiful game. And be careful, it might heat away and consume every single spare time you have. And until then, have a great soccer. And we would like to say thank you before we let you go as well to Saint-Clare. They are responsible for the music you heard today on this show. East Ending now playing on your favorite radio station in Ottawa, Toronto, GDTA, and a new album coming soon for Saint-Clare. Thank you very much, Saint-Clare. Big Ottawa Fury fan, so if you're an Ottawa Fury fan and you like their music, support them. Saintclair.bandcamp.com.